Trailblazers are certainly considered a super team. They've seemed to found their kryptonite in the Warriors. The Clips have lost their last 7 meetings against Golden State. Now, with the 17-point loss last night, they have now lost 5 of their last 7 games overall. A huge disappointment for Clips fans, especially considering they started the season 14-2, which was the best start in the league this year. Max, break it down for me. What's wrong with the Clippers?
Well, last night, I mean, the Clippers are a very good team. Their issue is they're going to have to match up with the Warriors if they're lucky and they get that far in the Western Conference Finals, which they may not because, as usual, the Spurs are excellent, right? But so the question is, how do you match up with the Warriors? And going into this game, I was talking about the Clippers' defense and loud and constant communication, that type of stuff. But then, and picking up Steph early and all that, but actually in the game itself, it was the offense, Stephen A., that was the problem. And I think that's a Doc issue last night. Why wouldn't you use Blake in the interior? You post Blake up to collapse the defense. You want to get Golden State into rotations defensively, not just allow them to stay along the perimeter where they can be disruptive. I don't understand what that's about. And if you're Blake Griffin and Doc's not calling it, why don't you get in the post and get in the paint and demand the ball? So I don't. It was curious to watch. How do you think you're going to beat Golden State or even compete with them? Going in, I thought it would be a defensive issue. Coming out, I think it's an offensive game plan. It was discouraging to see if you're a Clippers fan, which I'm not. I mean, the jokes on them, I usually think it's funny, but it was strange to watch.
Max Kellerman, this ain't that complicated. Blake Griffin's got to attack the basket. He's got to stop settling for jump shots. And he has to embrace the fact that he is supposed to be the superstar that is the difference maker. Chris Paul has Steph Curry to deal with, and to a lesser degree, Klay Thompson, or more degree, because Klay Thompson is defending him sometimes, because they always put bigger guards on an opposing offensive-minded guard if you're the Golden State Warriors, and Chris Paul has to deal with that. DeAndre Jordan is a liability because he has no offensive skills whatsoever. He can dunk the ball, great rebounder, great defender, great shot blocker, but he has no offensive post game to speak of at all. So it all comes down to the shoulders of Blake Griffin, who clearly was satisfied shooting jump shots, which makes no damn sense whatsoever. And then when you combine that with the fact that you've got a situation where they've now lost 7 straight to the Warriors, that's number one. Number two, Steph Curry missed all 8 of his three-point shots. And in games at the Staples Center this year, the dude is 4 for 28 from three-point range. Kevin Durant shot 29% from the field last night. It was his worst shooting performance of the season. So Steph didn't have a great game. Kevin Durant didn't have a game. And they were still blowing the Clippers out. This is just bad. And it comes down to, you can talk about the bench, all of that's true. The bench has to be up. JC and Spates and all of those boys have to do something for you. Chris Paul's got to elevate his level of play. DeAndre Jordan has to get an offense. He's not going to do it because he hasn't done it at this point in his career. No need to expect it for the rest of this season. But it comes down to Blake Griffin, who's approaching a final year of his contract. He's going to be a free agent this summer. Remind us all of the superstar we thought he was going to be and responding to challenges like this, which he clearly did not do last night. That's what this comes down to. This ain't about Doc Rivers. This is about a player that's a star needing to be a superstar.
Yes, I agree with that. Failing Doc Rivers using him properly in a game like that. I mean, Blake is a very well-rounded game. He showed that last year, and when he needs to be explosive, he did that in the playoffs too, or showed he's capable of doing it. But the advantage strategically that the Clippers have over the Warriors is their size. So if you're the coach of the Clippers, and Doc has forgotten more basketball than I'll ever know, I understand that. That's why it's curious to me. If you're the coach of the Clippers on offense, why don't you use the size? That's your strategic advantage. And he didn't, and it played right into the Warriors' hands in terms of the way the Clippers played offense. And that's why I think it's primarily Doc. Secondarily, if Doc's not calling it, then Blake's got to insist on the ball down there, which he also didn't do. We agree about that.
I'm trying to be clear about something. Are you saying that Blake Griffin didn't get the ball enough?
Not down low.
Whose fault is that? Blake Griffin barely goes down low.
I agree.
Blake
That's
Griffin
also
is
a
perfectly
problem.
comfortable in the perimeter.
I agree. Too comfortable.
But what I'm saying, but if you're comfortable on the perimeter at 6'10", with a dude about 4 inches shorter than you, Short of benching him or knocking him upside the head, what are you supposed to do?
By the way, DeAndre doesn't have a post game, but if he catches the ball in the paint, he scores it. You have size.
I got to cut you short because we got a special segment coming up. When we come back, we wrap the show with another installment of Final Take. Don't miss Stephen A's closing remarks, always strong when First Take rolls on. Join us, Mark Schlereth in the house. Always good to see you, my friend.
It's always great to be with you guys.
Stephen A., there was something you wanted to get into quickly before we discuss RG3, right?
Yeah, real quick. Excuse me for interrupting, Mark. Max, one of the things that I neglected to mention, it was in my archives. This is from back in May. The National Football League had partnered with two preeminent HBCU conferences, the MEAC and the SWAC conference, to increase opportunities for ethnic minorities, both professionals and students interested in pursuing careers in football administration. This is what the NFL had announced back in May. The goal was to provide qualified individuals with the preparation and skills needed to secure employment in professional football administration. So we just finished talking about what we talked about. We both stand by everything that we said, but I wanted to recognize that the NFL did partner with the MEAC and the SWAC conference in an effort to try to address some of these issues, and they need to be recognized for that. I just wanted to make sure I was fair to them.
No, appreciate you adding that. Let's get into it, gentlemen. RG3 is back, everybody. A source told ESPN that barring any unforeseen health setback, RG3 will start this week against the Bengals. Griffin hasn't played since week 1 when he threw for 190 yards, no TDs, and threw a pick before going down with a shoulder injury. The Browns, they're 0-12 and trying to avoid becoming the second team in NFL history to finish a season 0-16. Stephen A., RG3 starting, should he be?
Well, I don't mind him starting now because they're winless. They're not going anywhere, and I guess it's good for him to get in reps and try to define whether or not he's suited to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I think RG3's career as a starter is over. I think it's a foregone conclusion. Certainly, you look at the Browns and you say to yourself, Terrell Pryor, I've been very, very impressed with him. Not much else on their roster right now. Feel incredibly sorry for what Hugh Jackson is going through. It's got to be torture. But I'm just of the mindset that RG3 has basically played one game since 2014. He sat on the bench for the entire 2015 season where Dan Snyder and those boys wouldn't even allow him to dress in uniform because if he got hurt, they would owe him $16 million. They were not going to let that happen. 2016, we see what it is right there. He's only played one game this year. So I look at it from the standpoint that going into next year, he will have been out like 2 full years plus another half a year because he got injured in 2014. I just view him as an individual who's finished as a starter. Everything that I've been taught about the NFL, you got it, you got it. You don't, you don't. That doesn't mean he can't wear an NFL uniform. Doesn't mean he can't be a reserve. But as a franchise guy, as the guy that's my starting quarterback, I just don't see him being that dude any longer. I think this is the beginning of the official end of RG3 as a starting quarterback in the National Football League.
It's funny how that works in the NFL. Your brand gets tarnished. A lot of times it's because of injury or because you're on a bad team, and then all of a sudden the perception of you changes, and then you're not a starter. It happened to Kurt Warner. Off the greatest show on turf. All of a sudden, he's hurt. He's not starting. Now he's a tackling dummy behind a bad offensive line for the Giants because they had drafted Eli. They didn't want him taking those shots. But Kurt Warner could still play. Now, I'm not suggesting RG3 is Kurt Warner, but I've seen him achieve at a very high level over the full course of an NFL season. And I've never seen him as like a straight bum. I've never seen a healthy RG3 and look at him like, boy, that guy really stinks. At worst, he's like a below-average quarterback. So he may not be a franchise quarterback of the kind that gets paid those max dollars. But show me someone better for the Browns right now. I think he could start for a couple teams.
Well, I don't think there's any question there's nobody better. There's no better option for the Cleveland Browns. I think the big issue that you have is you go back to when he had success and you had this collegiate style of offense, this Baylor style of offense that he ran, and he was exceptional under the Shanahans doing that. But you put your body in harm's way. And here's a guy that all of a sudden can't stay healthy in that system. So they have to get away from that, and it exposes him as not being a efficient pocket passer. Could he become better? I don't think there's any question that you can continue to work on your craft and you can become better. The problem is once you have an injury history and once you start compiling one injury on top of another injury, and then also when you're an elite level athlete and you rely on athleticism to get you out of harm's way, you're putting yourself actually in harm's way by doing that. So the guys who stay healthy on a consistent basis in this league are guys who are afforded the protection of the pocket. And RG3 gets out there on the edge. I love the competitiveness, but you have to understand at some point you're too frail to take the hits that often transpire in an NFL game. You saw it right off the bat. And I had talked to him in the offseason about you got to slide. You got to get out of harm's way. You can't. These guys are too big, fast, and strong. And the very first opportunity, man, he lowers his shoulder on the sideline and gets crushed. And that's it for his opportunity to start again. So I'm glad they're giving him the opportunity. But I tell you what, there's a lot of work to be done before I think he becomes an efficient starting quarterback in this league. And I'm almost on Stephen A's side. I don't know if he's going to get that opportunity.
One of the things coming out of the draft, like, maybe he should be taken ahead of Andrew Luck. But the closer people got to Luck, the more they liked him and thought that he had all these intangibles they liked. But in addition to that, Luck is big and strong. And RG3 is not as big and as strong. And the idea is maybe if playing out of the pocket as much as he does, he's going to get hurt. And that's exactly what happened and keeps happening. So I get all that. But then I look at the Browns and I think, who else they got? If you can put some offensive linemen next to Joe Thomas and you got Pryor, and if Gordon never gets it together, like all of a sudden, RG3 can run and he can throw a deep ball, right? And you should be able to take advantage of that in the absence of a better starting quarterback, it seems to me.
Well, you brought up Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner was not only a Super Bowl champion. Kurt Warner was an individual that hadn't missed a season. We got basically RG3 missing the last 2 seasons, full seasons. And prior to that, he had gotten injured with a few games left. And so we're basically legitimately talking about 2.5 years that this guy has not really been a starting quarterback in the NFL. Everything that I've been taught about the NFL, you don't recover from that unless you're elite. And there's nothing elite about RG3, at least nothing that he's proven outside of the wheels he had on him his rookie year, which are no longer the case now. And not only that, he had breakaway speed north-south, but there was no elusivity attached to his game. He wasn't elusive like that. He couldn't shirk and jerk you and whatever. So the point is that with all of that being said, and with his questionable pocket presence and pocket passer ability, all of those things combined with a lack of repetition, I don't see how anybody can look at him and view him as a starting quarterback in the National Football League.
There are the outliers that have done that before. Warner had the thumb injury with the Giants. Remember, he went to Arizona. He was a backup to Liner. Okay? And then all of a sudden, he got his opportunity again. He got healthy, and he became that elite quarterback again and took them to a Super Bowl. But I'll go to Rich Gannon, a friend of mine. Rich Gannon was a journeyman quarterback. He played, he played for the Minnesota Vikings. He played for the Redskins. Then he finally kind of got it together in Kansas City, ended up getting benched because Elvis Gerbach got healthy, probably the biggest mistake they ever made in Kansas City. Then he goes to Oakland, and all of a sudden, bam,
put on a show.
MVP. He was great. But that doesn't happen very often. The light doesn't all of a sudden go off and you become this MVP caliber quarterback. That is the outlier.
Does he need to do that, though, to just be a starter? All he's got to do is be good enough to. I'm not saying MVP caliber, but you just mentioned it.
Healthy.
A lot of it is health and opportunity.
Right. Yeah.
We got to leave it there. I'm going to be interested to see him play on Sunday, and obviously to see if he stays in Cleveland.
Makes an interesting
And you mentioned Kansas City. You'll be breaking down that game a little later on NFL Live. Good to see you, Mark. Appreciate you.
Thank you, brother.
Coming up next, back to the association. The Clippers have gone from hot to not in the matter of a couple weeks. What is wrong with Doc and the crew? These guys will tell you next.
If there was